This is a little 750 F1 85 model with the Bosch ignition system. It had issues with idling at times, and the magnets in the pickups, turns out, were moving. The original Bosch style pickups, these magnets come loose and move, and they move out and hit the flywheel, and it makes them idle funny and stuff like that. I have had a couple of these repaired over the years, or bought changeover ones, and every time I've done them, I've done two, where the new wires have been put into the backs of the pickups, sort of just up here, you end up with extra height there, and I've had to grind out alternator covers to get them to clear the wires, and it's just a bit of a mess. And I spoke to Phil at Road and Race, and Phil said get these Yamaha ones, CY7 from Motorcycle Specialties. So I got a couple of them, and due to the way they're a bit different in how they look, I've put these CY7 pickups on a mounting plate from a Monster, so with a Kokusan ignition, and the holes for the pickups are much better. I had to slot the little holes in the pickups to get them on, but it would appear that as this, they've mounted up pretty well. I've had to, down here, I've got the degree wheel on it now, and you can see, if you can see in here or not, the dot on the degree wheel, on the flywheel, lining up with about the center of the pickup, and that's it. Top dead center. So that's where the set position is. Hopefully it's accurate. This is all I hope. I'm going to put the cover on soon enough and see if it works. The pickups, the wiring's all been heat shrinked with goop inside it, and I've got all these colours at the end, and I'll have to work out which is which on these. If you have the pickup wiring the wrong way around, they run at full advance all the time, so it's pretty easy to find out if you have the pickup wiring the wrong way around. Okay, so we're back on this side of the engine. The pickup plate, this bolt here, I had to file a little bit so we could move the pickup further away to get the gap right. I was down to about a 0.2 gap. I couldn't get the 0.35 that I wanted. And you can see I've had to file the edges of the washers here and the edges of the washers on the pickups to get it to where I want it to be, because the pickup plate wants to be almost as advanced as it can be for the marks to line up. But hopefully this will all work. Might have to put a bit more heat shrink around this to make it the right size to go through the hole, and have the rubber gland seal on it. But here's hoping. Might be a simple-ish fix for the Bosch pickup failures. The CY7 pickups I used for this job are a generic Yamaha. I think it's a Yamaha four-wheeler. In Australia they come from MCS, and they're just called CY7. I decided to use a pickup plate from a Monster or Super Sport with the Kokusan ignition system, because the mounts were similar. The Kokusan pickup was on the left and the CY7 is on the right, so they were fairly similar-ish, and it looked like they would mount to this plate a lot better than they would mount to the original Pantah F1 plate, which had a couple of ridges to align the original Bosch pickups, and that would interfere in these pickups sitting down. You would have needed to have filed them off. I didn't really want to do that, just in case it turned out to be a bad idea. So the Monster plate I had kicking around was a good idea. But if you put the pickup on the Monster pickup plate, you can see the holes don't line up. And as it turned out, I needed to move the holes toward the pickup about 2.5 millimeters each side. And if I had a mill, I would have put them in the mill and slotted it 2.5 mil toward the center and probably 1 millimeter toward the actual pickup magnet face. So that way you had a little bit more adjustment, because it turned out there possibly wasn't nearly enough adjustment in the system to get the pickup gap that I needed. So I got the file out and just filed the slots out, and that way you could see all the hole on the monster pickup plate. So I just mounted them up with the screws. Because the original washers on the monster plates weren't that big, I decided to get some just some 5mm panel washers and then file some flats on them, and that way I could mount them up and have a good clamp on the pickup mounting plate. And so that's the pickup mounting plate with both pickups mounted to it, ready to go. The pickup on the right, which is the most clockwise of the pickups, is the vertical, and the one on the left, which when it's mounted to the engine is the one at the bottom, is the horizontal. This is the original Bosch setup on the F1, and you can see on this the slots on the 2 bolts that hold the pickup plate to the engine. You can see it's about in the middle of its available range, and that's sort of as this bike was delivered. And you can see on this photo with the red circles added, there's a couple of dots on the flywheel, and those dots line up with a mark on the pickup, and that's how you set these pickups up. You set the engine to top dead center horizontal, and then you line the pickups, the centers of the pickups, up with those dots. So I did this just to make sure that the original was where it should be. And this is the adapted monster plate on the left and the Bosch original plate on the right. On the plate on the right, you can see that the 2 pickups that each Bosch pickup has, whereas the CY7 pickups on the left only have 1 round magnet. That's just how they are. I'm not sure why the Bosch used 2, but on the Bosch pickups, it's usually the outer pickup, or the one to the right hand side of the photo, that comes loose and actually moves out of the pickup and starts hitting the flywheel. And you can see both those magnets have a bit of a mark in the middle, which is where they've been hitting on the flywheel, on the lump that activates the pickups. This is CY7 pickups on the monster plate. There's a little clamp that helps hold the wires in place. I figured that I'd put a loop in the vertical pickup and run it back together, but realistically I should have just run the vertical pickup straight out and not put the loop in, because as you'll see later, the loop was a pain. And I also had to put a step in the little plate that holds the wiring into the groove, because the wiring was too thick. When I put the pickups plate on, it turned out that I needed it to be basically as advanced as possible, and even at that I had trouble getting a gap, so I ended up filing the very end of the lower adjustment slot to get enough advance and also enough gap in the pickup. And you can also see in this picture of the flywheel that there's a couple of dots, and one's got a burgundy paint, the other one's got a yellow paint on it. They're just the top dead center and the static advance marks, which I usually paint if I've got it all apart, because that way you can see very clearly with the timing light what's what. The full advance mark, which is just to the left hand side out of shot, was white. So when I had the timing light on it later, I was looking for yellow at idle and white at full advance. It just makes it much easier. So I put the pickups on, and I had to flatten the edge of the washers for the pickup mounting plate as well, just to get the pickup plate as far around clockwise or in the advanced direction as possible. And as you can see, the 2 dots on the flywheel again line up with the center of the pickup magnets. And it turned out it was spot on when I put the timing light on it later. Now the little loop of wire became a pain, because you can see the lump on the flywheel not very far away from it. So I had to make that little pin in the little bolt that holds the wiring plate on, just to keep that wire away from
the flywheel. As I said, in future I would have run that vertical pickup wire just straight out and joined the vertical and horizontal wires up there. It would have been much neater, realistically. But often with these things, your first attempt is the only attempt you get when you're using heat shrink that's lined with glue. It's a one-shot deal pretty much. In terms of the wiring, the blue wire goes to the white wire in the original loom, and the green wire goes to the black wire in the original loom. This bike had the original connector replaced previously at some point. You just need to make sure you know which one is vertical and which one is horizontal. Otherwise, you'll have to swap them around, but you'll only get it wrong once. Now, one thing with these Bosch ignition systems is the lump on the flywheel is not constant diameter. And this photo shows, if you like, where it's not a flat and a step, but it has at the right-hand side between the yellow arrow and the white arrow is sort of a reduced section. I think it's about 0.5 millimeter thinner as a general rule. But the red arrow is what the idle advance is activated by, and the yellow arrow is where its first step is, and it's probably about 23 or so degrees maybe. And then the white arrow is full advance, which on this is 32 degrees. I checked the flywheel marks when I had the degree wheel on it, when the alternator cover was back on, when I was doing the cam timing, and it turned out that the yellow mark was at 5 degrees and the white full advance mark was at 32 degrees. And when I got it running, it was spot on, which was nice. The only issue I had was that when I originally set it up, I set the pickup gap at 0.35, which is the original Pantah spec. That's what Phil Hitchcock had recommended, but at that, it advanced almost instantly from idle, and it wouldn't return to idle when it was hot. You'd have to sort of lower the idle speed a lot to get it to return to idle. I knew as soon as I started what the problem was. So I pulled the cover off again and increased the gap to 0.5 millimeters, and at that it was fine. It advanced probably around about 1800 revs to the first step, and then went to the full advance at probably about 2500 or maybe more RPM. But it would return to idle very nicely at that.